there, curl friends. Let's have a chat. So I wanted to do this video in order to help other people that might be learning about their natural hair and might not be able to really understand everything that might be going on with it, just starting their natural hair journey actually. I remember when I first started my natural hair journey 5 years ago, there were a couple of YouTubers that I could really look up to and try to figure out what exactly is going on with my hair. So I want to be a source for someone like that, someone to find out how to style their hair, what works for them, develop their own routine. So I'm going to go ahead and hop right into the video and tell you guys 10 tips on how I grew my hair over the past 5 years of being natural. So tip number one
is actually the oldest part of your hair
is that oils don't work for everybody. Everybody always praises coconut oil. And it's so funny because it's coconut oil is a great thing when you're cooking or as a substitute for other things. It could also work as a body oil, but for most naturals, it doesn't actually work on your hair that well. It tends to coat the hair. Oil is a sealant, and a lot of people don't really understand that. So you go into it, you're like, oh, let me put the oil in first. But if you put oil on your hair first, then none of the moisture can go into your hair and help it really grow. And that's what your hair really needs, all of that moisture, all of the water that it needs. So oil is a no-go for me. I can't do it. Tip number 2. So number 2 is you should always sleep on a satin bonnet or a satin pillowcase. I know, everybody says it. So what I found is in the past, I would always sleep on a cotton pillowcase and my hair was always dry. And I never understood, why is my hair always dry? Why is it shedding so much? I never thought maybe it's because I'm sleeping on this cotton pillowcase and it's drying out my hair, because you do sleep quite a bit. A lot of people sleep between 4 to 9 or even 10 hours a day. And that's all of that time that you're just tossing and turning on just something that's drying out all the oils in your hair and taking out all the moisture out of your hair. If you want your hair to grow, you gotta change your pillowcase or your hair routine at night. It's gotta go. So satin pillowcases or satin bonnet. Tip number 3. So tip number 3 is really just natural hair routines on YouTube. So take it with a grain of salt. When you watch a natural hair routine, people think, oh, this person has the same type of hair as me, so it's gonna work for me. But that is not always the case. Trust me, I've tried so many different hair routines, and honestly, what works for your hair works for your hair. It's not always going to be what works for me works for everybody that has similar hair to mine. Even the porosity thing could be a difference in that hair routine. There's a lot that goes into creating a hair routine for your hair. I might do a video on that later on, but right at this time, always take hair routines that you see on YouTube with a grain of salt. So just keep an eye out for that. And never just think, oh, all of these products work for this person, so they should work for me. And I've always run into that in the past, just constantly trying products and it's not working. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But it's just, we have different hair types, we have different hair textures, different porosities, different hair routines. I might work out more than one person, so they might have more oil, they might have less oil on their hair, just different things to factor in. So take it with a grain of salt. Tip number 4 that I learned is always try to figure out ways to avoid dyeing your hair if you can. Because I've grown my hair out, I can't tell you how many times, probably 3 times over the past 5 years. I've grown out the entire length of my hair. So when I first went natural, I had my hair fully black like this. After about a year of me being natural, I'm like, hey, I kind of want to switch it up a little bit. Let me do highlights. So I did highlights, and then I'm like, well, these look kind of cool, and my hair didn't get damaged like I thought it would be, even though I used bleach. So I'm like, let me dye all of my hair blonde. So that's what I did. I dyed almost all of my hair blonde except a little bit at the root. And that really damaged my hair. And I kind of regret it. I love the way that the blonde looks with natural hair because it really makes the curls pop a lot more than when it's just black like this, because it's just flat. But with the blonde, it fried my hair completely. So if you can avoid dyeing your hair, do. Or if you can use any other dyes other than bleach, or maybe you could use like henna or a temporary color, like the hair paint wax that I had in my last video, I think a couple of months ago. That's always a good way to dye your hair if you're always fixing to change your hair color like I was. So stay away from the dye if you can. That's tip number 4. Tip number 5. So number 5 is try to stay away from protective styles that really stress out your edges. Because people always, they always say, oh, you should do protective styles, it really helps your hair grow. That's not always the case. When you are constantly putting stuff on your edges or on your hairline when you do protective styles, it could really damage the hair around this area, which causes thinning and possibly even balding. And then you're back to square one in this area, but the rest could be flourishing. So in the past, what I've learned is a good protective style is wigs. Braids are a little iffy because if you get them too big, it could be weighing down your hair too much. If your hair's very thin or if it's not as thick, it could weigh your hair down a lot and pull out your hair. Or if you do them too thin, then it could actually cause your hair to dry out more, or it could be harder to undo them, causing more unnecessary damage to your hair. So always take these protective styles with a grain of salt. Try to figure out what works best for you. Wigs are really good, but another thing to watch out for is if you're gluing them down, try to stay off of your edges because you will lose those edges. I'm sorry, you will lose them. So protective styles. So a thing with them is to always try to protect your ends, and if your ends are exposed, it's not really protecting your hair like it should be. The end of your hair is actually the longest part of your hair. So what you want to do if you want to retain as much length as possible is to try to really protect the ends of your hair, or try to figure out a way to protect it even when it's being worn down like this. So using different fabrics as shirts works too. So tip number 6. This one took me a long time to figure out. So this one is just really understanding the porosity of your hair. Understanding that, yeah, I might have this hair type, but that doesn't really tell you what products go with your hair, what hair routine works best for you. So understanding porosity and understanding what low porosity is, what high porosity is, and how water works with your hair. So I personally have low porosity hair. So I know if I put water on my hair, it has to be warm, or I have to massage it in, or it's just gonna sit right on top of my hair. You know when you wake up in the morning and there's dew on top of the grass? That's the way that my hair is with water. It doesn't go into my hair unless if I massage it in, or if I put warm water on my hair. So that's one of the things with low porosity hair that I found out, and it took me forever to figure this out. And I tried so many creams and so many different products that just would not work for my hair because it didn't have a lot of water in them. I figured out water-based products actually work best for my hair since I do have low porosity hair. So that's a fun fact for you. So tip number 7, just really understanding length retention. So length retention is figuring out ways to retain the length on your hair. So like I said, the ends of your hair are the oldest part of your hair. So figuring out a way to protect that with protective styles, like I said, or using a satin pillowcase, it all comes into conjunction with length retention. So another thing with length retention is also trimming your hair when it needs to be trimmed. So if you skip out on trimming your hair, it is a no-go, because if you get split ends at some point and you don't trim your hair is gonna split all the way up. Your hair could be so long, but the ends of your hair are gonna be forked in half, and it's not gonna look good. I'm sorry, it's just not. It doesn't work that way, which is really terrible, you know? I really wish it could work that way, but it just doesn't look right. It doesn't have that like bounce to it when your ends aren't trimmed. So that's another thing, a key to picking up on when you need a trim on your hair. When your hair isn't bouncing back like it used to, when it doesn't have as much shrinkage as it used to, and it seems kind of weighed down, or it seems very frizzy on the ends, that's when you really need a trim. Especially on first day hair and you're seeing frizz on the ends of your hair, you need a trim. I'm sorry, hard to break it to you, but it's time. It's time for that trim. And people do trims over the course of like between 6 weeks, or it could even be like 3 months at a time. It's not necessary for you to trim your hair every 2 weeks or so, because at that point you're just keeping the same length of hair. If you want the same length of hair, that's fine. But if you're trying to grow your hair, I would say trim probably once every 3 months at the like longest that you should go between trims, but any more than that I don't think is like too necessary. So that's another thing, really keeping up with the trims. So tip number 8 is listening to your hair. I know it sounds weird because hair doesn't talk to you. It really doesn't. So just understanding, and if you use different products and you're seeing a consistent pattern with certain products, like, okay, let's say I use creams continuously on my hair and I'm noticing that my hair isn't lasting long enough on wash days. Like, I'll wash my hair, I'll put the cream on, and then it's all frizzy and undefined, or it's shedding a lot and it's just tangling all the time, and I keep using the same product or the same type of product, so I keep using creams throughout the next like month or two. At the end of that, my hair is going to be pretty damaged. So it's just really like listening to what works for your hair and really hearing it out in a way. So like if you see something's not working for your hair, you got to change it. Otherwise, you're just not going to retain the length that you want to retain. So that's another thing about that. And that's tip number 8. So tip number 9 is just really having fun with your hair. So yeah, you could do all the protective styles you want, but it's also a thing to like really incorporate into your hair journey and your hair routine, even if you want to retain length. So try to have fun with it. If you stick to a consistent schedule all the time, yeah, your hair is gonna grow, but then it's also like you're not allowing for other things in your life to happen. So like, let's say I have a protective style and I want to go swimming. Obviously, I'm gonna try to create a preparation for that, or I'm gonna try to figure out something that works with that. I'm not gonna be like, hey, I'm not gonna go swimming at all, I'm just gonna sit out, and yeah, my hair's gonna grow, but then it's also like I'm losing out on fun in my own life because of my hair, and we can't just have that all the time. Yeah, sometimes it's fine, but all the time it's not good. It's not good for your hair. So tip number 10 is, this is a magical tip, guys. Magical tip here. So tip number 10 is create your own hair routine. I know. I said this earlier. Hair routines don't work for everybody. Especially if you see like someone with the same hair type and you're like, what's your hair routine? What do you use on your hair? I get that all the time. But then the other thing too is like what works for my hair does not work for yours. Or what might work for one person might not work for another, you know? So it's really just create your own hair routine. Try to figure out what works best for you on your own schedule. That's another thing too. You could try someone else's schedule. And if that works, great. But if not, you're back to square one. So just really try to create your own hair routine and you'll see your hair flourish. Use all these tips and you'll see your hair grow. Like I said, I've grown my hair out 3 or 4 times over the past 5 years. The entire length of it, all 18 inches of my hair, I've grown out 3 times over this past 5 years. So I always say health over length any day. Health over length any day. If you need a trim, get a trim. If you don't do it. Alright guys, so that's my 10 tips on how to grow long hair. And also a little sneak peek on my natural hair journey for you guys. I'll be redoing that video, re-uploading. I uploaded one a little while ago, but I kind of want to change a couple of things. And I'll see you guys then. Bye.